So Dennis, when I introduce you, it's entrepreneur in residence is what I should call you?
Expert in
Or
residence.
what's that? Expert in
In
residence.
residence, yes.
Okay, all right.
Welcome to M2TechCast, a live internet radio show offering the latest news and interviews with the people driving business, technology, and politics in Michigan. Now, your hosts, Matt Roush and Mike Brennan.
Hey, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And we are back once again with the March 15th, 2021 version of the M2TechCast. Welcome to the show. We've got a good one for you today, and we are kicking it off with someone from the Centropolis Accelerator at Lawrence Technological University in Southfield, Dennis Shaver, who is one of their experts in residence. Dennis, let's first of all, welcome to the show. Glad you could be with us today.
Thank you very much, Mike and Matt. I love your show. Always watch it, and it's amazing the amount of content and material that we get with your show. And hopefully what we share with you today is even better than what you've ever seen in the past.
Okay, good.
And that was an unsolicited testimonial out there in the audience. So I just, we didn't put him up to it. He just did it on his own. So go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to start out by thinking that maybe some people out there in the audience have not heard of the Centropolis Accelerator yet. So why don't we start out by telling us what is the Centropolis Accelerator, what does it intend to do, and what services does it offer?
Well, first of all, a lot of us like to have fast cars, right? And the first thing we do when we have a fast car is accelerate it. We push down the gas pedal. And that's kind of what we do here as an accelerator, is that we help people with physical products. And what I mean by physical products is real products, like something that you could actually get your hands on and make, hopefully get it commercialized in the marketplace. So we help with that. And our focus is to fuel the growth of hardware entrepreneurs, in other words, physical products, by providing access to key resources. And that means mentors from people like us. I'm an expert in residence here. And it's not just because I have gray hair, but it's decades of experience in working in the industry, design through manufacturing with companies like PepsiCo, Clorox, General Motors, and several business startups. So they invite us here to work with the Centropolis Center to be a key resource and also help with offering up workshops, cutting edge technology support, corporate connections, that's very key. Student and faculty engagement is amazing here at Lawrence Tech. I've already got several projects that I'm working on with them. It's amazing getting the collaboration with them. We also put on major events, which we'll talk about later here. And then also shared workspace in a community of industry peers that you can work with. Now, we also work in partnership with Automation Alley and Lean Rocket Labs. And collectively, we reach out for Industry 4.0 technologies globally and inviting them to be part of this accelerator. In fact, we also receive applications all over the world. I guess there's supposed to be something like 230 applications we received so far from 30 different countries, including Europe, Brazil, Asia, and all over the USA, and including here in Michigan. Sometimes we're considered a different country as well.
So let's talk about this latest effort, the C3 or C cubed accelerator.
Yes.
How is it different from the overall accelerator, and what is its mission?
Absolutely. So first of all, through engagement and support in speed to market is something very, very important to accelerate a new product to get it to market. But we also help you identify and align with the most effective resources to better navigate how to get through the manufacturing, through the technology, and also market viable products so that you can pave the path for commercialization. So what's unique about C3 is that it's for clean tech, climate tech, and circular economy. So that's something that's a big drive, especially here in Michigan and beyond. So we help accelerate those technologies to demonstrate positive impact on increasing energy efficiency, generating renewable energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and recycling and upcycling as well. So we basically help them accelerate their technology to support the challenges and needs also of state, county, and department utility transmission firms, manufacturing companies, and commercial building operations.
So Dennis, who's paying the bill on all this? Where's the money coming from?
Well, that's always a good point. It's like, show me the money. And it's like, the thing about what's beautiful about what we're doing here is it's the latest and greatest in terms of helping evolve technology and getting to commercialization. So first of all, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, better known as EAGLE, is supporting us. The New Economy Initiative, NEI, and also, most importantly, as Wells Fargo Innovation Incubator, and that's IN2. Now, totaling, we got about $275,000 in funding grants, no equity interest-free investments, and services to support the product development of physical products, scaling those products in clean tech, climate tech, and circular economy technologies.
So why don't you give me some examples of each of those three C's? A couple of examples of what a good clean tech project would be, what a good climate tech product would be, what a good circular economy product would be.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's one example here of a clean tech company. It's right here in Michigan, and it's called Rhombus Energy. Now, they also are recognized as a best clean tech company in a recent competition that we had. They actually design and manufacture high voltage, fast charging EV, electronic vehicle chargers. You can pretty much charge this in about an hour. And I know it's not as fast as your Maserati, Matt, but it's pretty.
Bruce is supposed to know about that. You got to be quiet. So
the other thing is that we talk about circular economy is that when you're looking at recycling or repurposing, can we help take, for example, spent grain from a brewery and be able to repurpose that grain? Now, back when I was a kid, I lived in Mayville, Michigan, we had 110 cows and we took that spent grain and fed it to our cattle. Well, there's better ways of utilizing that grain that you can actually turn into some other form of organic or recycled type of material and add it back to a value added product for industry.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the criteria for becoming a client of the C3 Accelerator. What's required?
First of all, what's required, and I want to share with you kind of what we do here as well. And we offer design through manufacturing support. Here's an example of what you would see in terms of design work. We not only do the design, but we also do value engineering, reverse engineering. This is not my face. This was a deformed face where we had it scanned and then provide it for the surgeon to be able to do implants for this as well. So we do 3D printing of parts to get it to as close as possible to something as close as possible to the real product, but it's still a prototype. And then also we do injection mold tool design for people. And this is a small tool here that can produce about 1 million parts, plastic parts. And then we also, of course, do smart devices for, clean tech, climate tech, and circular economy type of things here. So that just gives you an example of the capabilities. We also work with local manufacturers as well and service providers who offer these services. So we're making connections. So here's the thing. When people have a great idea for a clean tech, climate tech, or circular economy technology, they're all excited, they're ready to accelerate and get to the market as soon as possible. But even with my experience working with the big three and other companies and startups is that as a CEO or a startup or founder, we don't always have the access to everything and everybody. That's the beauty of working here at the C3 incubator, is that we're connected with these resources, so we can help you connect with them and understand how to identify and align with the most effective resources. And then from there, knowing how to navigate each step to get toward not only a market viable product, but most importantly, how to commercialize it effectively.
So you got everybody all lathered up. They want to figure out a way to get plugged into this. How do they do that?
Well, first of all, the way that the criteria here is it has to be one of the three C's, and that's clean tech, climate tech, and circular economy. This, first of all, is open globally to growth stage startups. In other words, growth means that you've already planted the seed, you've already cultivated the land, and now you're expecting it to grow. Some people will come to us and all they have is an idea, and it's like an idea is an idea until you know how to take effective action on it. So we actually work with people at the growth stage. In other words, they have strong market potential with issued patents and or patent pending. They also have evidence of customer traction. In other words, like letters of intent, letters of interest from potential target market contacts and or buyers. They have a solid understanding of the competitive landscape. They have an established management team, including funding resources already in place. And then also an existing financial runway in place to support the technology. And then most importantly is that these companies are either funded through other accelerators and or federal or state funding. Now, the thing is, as I mentioned about being a growth company is at TR level 5, technology readiness level 5. Level 5 means that you already have the realistic elements of your product so that it can be tested in a simulated environment. Now, a level 4 is you're just kind of testing a lab environment. It must be at this level to be able to apply for this. So the qualified technologies are clean tech, provide renewable energy, fuels, or improve efficiency. That's what it would do. Support electrification, replacing direct fossil fuel, propane, heating, gasoline, and then also organic or natural materials that displace non-sustainable materials in the product or processes. Climate tech is where you reduce the carbon dioxide, methane, or other harmful emissions, or you sequester CO2 and convert into value-added products, or provide adaptation solutions to existing and expected impacts to climate change. Now, you talked about circular economy. That's where we find ways to get innovative and convert waste streams into value-added products like recycling, upcycling, reprocessing of materials, or improve recycling efficiencies, and then also improve biodegradable, recycle, upcycled product designs. And then most importantly, reduce the amount of materials that typically end up in landfills. And here in Michigan, we got a lot of material in our landfills. In fact, we have even material waste coming from Canada being dumped in our landfills. So we want to be able to convert from about 18% recycling to at least 45%. And there's plenty of potential for that.
So it sounds like, do they need to be commercial already or pre-commercial? Because what you've just described is really a second tier kind of company. It's not a startup at all. It's a stage 2. I mean, that's pretty advanced company right there, right?
If you want more information on this, because I had never heard of these technology readiness levels designation. That's a concept that came out of the space program. Actually, it came out of NASA. Right. And so you can just Google technology readiness level and figure out where your product or idea is on that scale. But what you're saying is you want somebody at least at level 5. Right?
Yes, and yeah, exactly right. You can see that online. And also tomorrow we're going to have an informational webinar, March 6th at 12 noon. Got to attend it. We'll have lots of great content there that we'll be sharing. And you can find that in Centropolis Accelerator /events. Centropolis Accelerator /events. So be aware of that. And also please note that we're also focusing on helping underrepresented groups like women-owned business and minority-owned businesses. And there's plenty of potential there. So don't be shy here. Reach out, connect, check us out online. And then also the deadline to apply for this is May 31st. So to find out more about that, get on centropolisaccelerator.com /programs.
Okay, and that's CENTREPOLIS.
Yes,
accelerator.com. And we've got links to that. Mike, I'm sure you've got a link to that on your webpage someplace. We'll put a link to it on the video for this story. Also,
absolutely, yeah.
Right. And then we also have a business showcase event. Got to check that out as well. That's in the beginning of August 26th, I think it is. So be sure to check that out. And you'll hear more about that tomorrow at our informational webinar.
Dare we hope that by then that can be in person, maybe, knock on wood. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
all right, we're out of time, man. Take us out. So.
All right, Dennis Shaver of Centropolis Accelerator about the C3 Accelerator program. Check it out at centropolisaccelerator.com. We'll be right back with another segment of the M2 TechCast. For right now, it's Matt Roush
and Mike Brennan,
and you're watching the M2 TechCast.
Lawrence Technological University graduates earn a degree and a higher starting salary. In fact, when it comes to earning potential, the Brookings Institution rates LTU 5th among U.S. colleges and universities. Be enriched. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
What do you get at Lawrence Technological University? Everything. Great labs and studios, supportive professors, plus a full campus life, NAIA athletics, and all the software you need to succeed. Be smart. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
We're back. Matt had to drop out. He had a previous engagement, so I'm going to go one-on-one with Kathleen Norton-Schock, but I think I can handle it. So Kathleen, lots of great stuff coming up out of the Michigan Council of Women in Technology, and of course, your own particular podcast, Diva Tech Talk. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Actually, thank you for asking me to participate earlier in the month than I anticipated, because of course we are in Women's History Month. Big deal for us. Big deal, I think, for everyone, women and men. If your listeners are Facebook users, they can go to the Michigan Council of Women in Technology Facebook site. Just do a little search for Michigan Council of Women in Technology and go back to a post that we did on January 20th, which happens, of course, just coincidentally to be Inauguration Day. And on that very substantive post, we cataloged the struggle women have undertaken in this country and globally to assert equal rights. I mean, for instance, it took 144 years for women to get the vote and another 40 to 50 for women of color to exercise voting rights, right? So progress on both fronts have accelerated mightily, particularly beginning in the 70s. And if you look at the post, it'll show it. All of a sudden, Title IX, women marching on Washington, Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs. And then you go into
add real quick, Kathleen, that my grandmother was a suffragette way back when.
Doesn't surprise me, Michael. Doesn't surprise me at all.
Okay.
So often on that Facebook site, and I would encourage some of your listeners to go to it if they don't mind using Facebook. I, of course, am in my 18th year of volunteerism for MCWT because I believe in it so much. And we have a number of studies from key allies and supporters, companies like Deloitte, PwC, McKinsey, the market researcher Gallup, right? Stanford Center for Equity and E&Y. And there are substantive studies, some that go over 10 years, some that go over 2 years, some that go over 15 years, that talk about how important it is for diversity, equity, and inclusion to be part of the way we treat the world, and particularly for both nonprofits and for-profits. In the case of nonprofits, there's lots of data that says that you make a greater impact more quickly and more efficiently when you have diverse teams. But for-profits in particular, if there are more women on your board, more women in your C-suite, your profits go up, and so does your stock typically. So again, I do encourage people to go to Facebook, to the Michigan Council of Women in Technology site. I've been not monitoring it, I've been running it for 13 years. And the bottom line is there's a ton of data there, but our January 20th post in particular will give you a very quick and dirty history of all of the progress women have made and then shine a light on what they need to do in the future. And you know me, I'm a pretty practical person. So speaking about shining a light on the future, it's only really in the last 5 years that DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, have become a watchword and an initiative for most of our Fortune 500 or Fortune 2000 companies. And so, of course, that's great when companies in our area, for instance, like GM and Ford and Stellantis and Ally and Comerica, all have substantive programs. And in my field, Oracle, Cisco, VMware, they all have substantive programs. But I'd also like to say that it's also equally important for smaller companies, possibly privately held companies, to do the same thing. And it just so happens that in the last 2 weeks, there's a smaller company where I've made the acquaintance of their director of human resources. And I got to tell you, I was very impressed. The name of the company is OHM Advisors. They are an AEC company, architectural engineering company and consulting. And their human resources director is a woman of color, Kelly Jackson, and she's been with them 27 years, 25 of them in HR. And she's known, and I didn't know this because I'm not an HR expert, in our region as an HR industry expert in things like compliance, benefits, talent recruitment, talent fostering, but now also in DEI. OHM is privately held. When she started out, there were only 60 people working at the company. They now have 520 colleagues spread among 16 offices in 4 states. And since 2017, at the behest of her leadership, she has formally championed diversity programs, DEI formal programs at OHM. From 2018 through today, as an example, OHM has internal programs where they brought in and trained 520 colleagues in such things as bias training. So they brought in a nationwide expert for 2 years who worked with them and trained every one of their people multiple times in diversity and inclusion and what it means and how to hire and how to use people, not use them, but have them use their own talents to forward your mission. And in 2020, our year of COVID, they evolved the program so that now they don't just have a nationwide expert and they're not just educating, they have facilitative workshops where people get together and talk about their experiences and share how they feel about these things. Like, for instance, they had a recent workshop on microaggressions, which many people of color and many women have experienced in the workplace. And how do you deal with it? And what have people's experiences been? So I was super, super impressed. So that impressed me to begin with. And then she begins to tell me that OHM has stretched their efforts in a whole bunch of different ways. Over the last 3 years, they're a private company. They make maybe 70 million a year. They are doing scholarship programs for 12 women or people in diverse in what we would call ethnic minorities to go to school, right? In an area that they're interested in, which is civil engineering. And on top of that, they participate with our own University of Michigan in matching 50% of its Pelham scholarship for civil engineering up to a cap of $75,000. And also, with Kelly's inspiration and urging, their president last year, who's now the head of their board of directors, and he's the H in OHM, his name is John Hiltz. He is one of only 1,300 CEOs. Now, you got to understand that in our country, we have 195,000 plus CEOs. Only 1,300 thus far, and I'm sure this is going to change, have signed the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion Pledge, which says, and it's a 3-page document. I read it over the weekend and went, whoa, because it has in it all of the best practices to really make DEI programs successful. And they signed it last year, and they're relatively small. So I was super impressed. And I just met these people and thought, okay, this is a great example. They're right down in Livonia, right on Plymouth Road. So they're in our region. And they have a lot of this stuff down. And if anybody else wants to learn from them, their website is www.ohm-advisors.com. You go to, it's a great website. I don't know who did it, but they did a beautiful job. And you touch the diversity and inclusion tab, and all of a sudden, all this information, and again, recommendations for other companies is there. So I was impressed by meeting them, and I thought they were a great example for our particular topic. But as you know, of course, besides MCWT, I'm now with Nicole Scheffler, who is now a director of engineering at VMware, a big company I just mentioned a minute ago. Diva Tech Talk is a labor of love for us. And we publish every month podcasts highlighting women leaders, right? And women tech leaders, because that's the field we're in. We're at 102 podcasts right now. But about a year and a half ago, we did a little sub-series because we kept finding women, at the Anita Borg conference, at the Grace Hopper conference, at an Anita Borg event, at an event at Logicalis. We kept finding women who were either involved in or who had been elevated to head diversity and inclusion programs at their various companies like Oracle, Microsoft, Cisco. But there are also smaller companies like Avalara, or a company that at the point they first started it was pretty small, Zillow, and now, of course, it's a powerhouse, right? So we have a set of podcasts. There's 102 of them, but there are 3 in particular that, again, give great insight into how one can do a DEI program. And so if you go to our website, which is www.diva, Tech, talk.com, You can download any one of our podcasts, but particularly I would recommend podcasts 83, 87, and 93, where we have DEI leaders from tech companies talking about how they did it. And if you just want to go to the podcast channels, of course, we're in the Apple library, we're at the Google channel, the Google podcast channel. We are, of course, on Spotify. I think everyone is, and we are on Stitcher. So finally, for diversity in action on my own side, again, I mentioned before, I'm an 18-year volunteer in my spare time on the marketing side of MCWT, the Michigan Council of Women in Technology. And Chris Rzuski, who is our amazing executive director, and I were talking in February about what were we going to do about National Women's Month. And she said, Kathleen, this is silly. We do everything every day for women. She said, but I guess if you're going to talk about it, one of the things you can possibly do is just talk about our deadlines in March. Well, you happen to bring me on this week, and we have a big deadline this week. We do an annual Michigan Woman of the Year in Tech Award. I think you know about that. We've been talking about it for about 4 or 5 years. We've done some really cool women. Allison Gleason, who's a friend of mine, who was a senior vice president at Cisco, did it one year. In 2019, we had a woman who was who was part of the CIO program. In other words, the CIO for U of M. She worked in his office. So, you don't have to be a member of MCWT, but this is the week that we have the deadline for nominations. So I would ask if anybody knows a woman who embodies our mission. And as you know, our mission is inspiring and growing women in technology. So the nominee probably has to be a person who leads today or has led in the past, some kind of significant positive change for women, either women who are working in, teaching, or studying IT. It has to be an IT or some kind of computer-related field of study or mission in life, but the recipient does not need to be a member of MCWT. Nomination forms are available on our website, www.mcwt.org, and submissions have to be emailed to awards@mcwt.org by March 19th, which is this coming Friday. So I would ask that as soon as this, well, I know you're live right now, so hopefully somebody will be hearing this, but as soon as we get the link, we'll put it out on various sites. We've gotten some nominations thus far, but we can always use more. And if you don't make it this year, you'll make it next year. It'll be awarded we always do a career event, a big one in May. I can't remember the formal name of it, but we'll probably talk about it next month. And then obviously too, there's the press involved. We'll get the press release out and we'll all know about this fabulous person who won as Woman of the Year in Technology for, I think this would be our 5th or 6th year.
All right, well, we got about a minute left. So one more time, run me through all those websites where everybody can pick up all this information.
Okay, so for good examples on a great smaller company DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion program, I do recommend that people go to my new friend, Kelly Jackson's site, where she's director for the last quarter of a century of HR for OHM Advisors. And that would be www.ohm-advisors, advisors.com, and touch the diversity and inclusion tab. But you also can see a whole bunch of other things about all the wonderful things they're doing for infrastructure in our country. Diva Tech Talk is DIVATECHTALK.com. And of course, the Michigan Council of Women in Technology is www.mcwt.org.
All right, Kathleen Norton-Schock, a woman of many hats. Appreciate you being on the show today. And I know Dave Phillips is engineering, so as soon as he gets me that video link, we'll be able to turn this segment around for you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And thanks as always for the opportunity. I'll see you in April.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Kathleen. We'll be right back with another segment. Hopefully Fred Brown, our epidemiologist, is standing by. And so this is Mike Brennan. Stand by for more.
Lawrence Technological University
graduates
earn a degree
Did you get your
starting salary. In fact, when
What's
it comes
that?
to earning potential,
Have you gotten your vaccine?
ranks LTU
I get it on the
US
19th.
colleges and universities.
Yeah, I got both
Be
of mine
rich.
already.
Be more.
Oh,
at
yeah.
LTU.
We're a little
lucky.
slow in Washtenaw County, so.
Salaries
We
of
need Fred Brown to kick some more butt here, get people to get those vaccines
How
out.
are you guys?
Okay, hi, Fred. Okay, I'm going to jump off. Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Thanks.
Find out more at ltu.edu.
What do you get at Lawrence
Just you and
Technological
me. Matt's
University?
out. He has
Great
another
labs
thing he
and
had to
studios,
attend, so.
supportive professors, plus
That's all right.
campus
We'll
life,
make it go with it.
athletics, and all the software you need to succeed. Be smart, be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches.
Do you have any
There we go.
questions?
Find out more at
Hang on. There we go.
ltu.
Hey, it's Mike Brennan. We're back. Matt had to step out to deal with another event that he's working today. And so I'll go one-on-one with my friend here, epidemiologist Fred Brown, and who's been with us now for about a year, actually. And we've been trying to keep everybody up to date on all the latest news with COVID-19. And now with the good news that the vaccines are being distributed. And as I just mentioned to Kathleen before we started, I finally got mine scheduled. I'm going to do it at the EMU Convocation Center on the 19th, on Friday. And so that's the Pfizer vaccine. And then I go back on April 9th to get my second shot. And then hopefully we'll be okay. Right, Fred?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. On an individual basis, you'll be a lot more protected. There's no doubt about it. Once you get the vaccines, they are super protective, really safe, and great technology.
So, but even we talked about this last week, but I wanted to bring it up again. Even after you get vaccinated, does not mean then that you can pack yourself into a bar without a mask or anything like that, right? There's still a lot of precautions that need to be taken.
Yeah, actually, the challenge we have is that the vaccines are intermuscular, and so those go into your muscles, and they give you a nice sense of immunity inside your body. The problem is the virus actually attacks your nasal mucosa, which is a different part of your body and isn't part of the natural. It has a slightly different immune response than what happens inside the rest of your body. And so what we're not sure about is whether or not your body is safe, but you're still at risk of getting infected because your mucosal membranes aren't protected, or that you can transfer it to other people. And especially if you are at risk, that means older, having comorbid disease, or other risk factors, that you really could transfer, even if you the virus, even if you have been vaccinated. And so until we get a lot more safe, I think I showed you my little diagram of what my epidemiologist friends said, what they would feel comfortable doing, what they wouldn't feel comfortable doing. If I haven't done that, maybe I should do that next week. But I can do that. I kind of surveyed 100 epidemiologists of friends of mine and said, what activities would you feel comfortable with, and under what circumstances? And every one of them said, going to a bar, not till we reach herd immunity. That means a combination of vaccination plus infection rates have to be at this rate, probably over 80% of the population. And that's a big hurdle to go to a bar. That's the same for a big sporting event. But on the other hand, if you're just talking about getting together with another friend who's also been vaccinated, absolutely. Don't go with more than two friends though who have been vaccinated.
Well, President Biden, last week said that he was hoping by the 4th of July, you could have a small, intimate 4th of July party. He didn't get into a high level of detail. What does that mean? 4 or 5 people, everybody wearing masks, or what?
So there are a couple of things that matter. Number one, it's how many from different families are getting together. So if you're talking about your own pod and you're vaccinated and everyone else isn't vaccinated, and you're used, and it's a group you're getting together with all the time and who are being relatively safe, then yeah, you can have that party. If you're talking about another family, and again, with everyone having been vaccinated at this point, I think by July 4th, by July 14th, everyone will be vaccinated. I'm not sure about July 4th. So if you're at that stage where everyone's vaccinated, or who's at risk, certainly, and it's 2 families getting together, then that's fine, even if they don't commingle. The issues are if it's still in a closed area, so be outside on a barbecue, not inside. Instead of barbecue, not an indoor party with 60 people, and that's really important. So it's still the same risk factors, right? Are you commingling with lots of crowds in a real tight area, sharing air, and how many people are at risk. And if those two things are high, then you don't want to do it even if you've been vaccinated. You want to continue to wear a mask. You want to avoid those situations. So when you're commingling with lots of people, commingling the air with lots of people, and a lot of these people, and you or a lot of the people in the audience and in your group are at risk, don't do it.
Well, there's a couple of events coming up that I've been debating on whether I should even participate in. Through what I do with my other project, Michigan Marijuana Report, I've been invited to a golf outing at the end of May, which would be outdoors.
Excellent.
And then a beach party at the end of June on Lake Michigan, which of course would be outdoors. And what do you think?
Bring your own food and go. Have a great time, but still maintain precautions, right? Golfing is relatively safe. On the beach is relatively safe. We really haven't been able to trace anything, directly back to those events officially. So we have been watching those things pretty carefully. And golfing seems safe, and so does going to a beach where there's lots of air circulation. I wouldn't stand in big lines though, waiting for barbecue to be served.
And then also, I don't know if it's true or whether it's just an urban legend, something about ultraviolet light. Our little COVID friends don't like ultraviolet light.
They don't like it. That's right. It disrupts them completely. UV light is great. Sunlight is good generally, because it also that fresh air, a little bit of exercise really stimulates your immune system. It's all good.
Okay.
D3, vitamin D3. So speaking of that, I wanted to go back, if it makes sense, because people, typically we have these clinical tests and trials, and then you never hear anything back, and everyone's starting to get vaccinated. So what happened was the FDA, in order to approve Johnson & Johnson's vaccine on February 13th, as I recall, they actually went back and said, how safe have our vaccines been to date? And so they actually, so do we have a systematic problem with the way we're approving these vaccines? If so, we should reflect this in the new J&J vaccine. But if we've been safe with Moderna and Pfizer with our last review, then things should be good. And so if you like, I can share my screen a little bit and show you what they said, which I think is kind of heartening. So let's see here. I need to go to a different size of slides. Let me guess. So let me go do that. Here we are. And we'll start.
Lots of slides.
Well, we won't show them all today. We'll save a few, just in case you've got extra questions. Then here we are on the 15th. I'm ahead of myself. But anyway.
The Ides of March today, Fred.
That's right. So what we have in our database is we've got two big databases. One is called VAERS, and VAERS is a database that actually you're required to fill in. So when you go on a clinical trial, they say, would you mind going on as a special subset of our collection data set? And if you agree, then we're going to go and actively collect lots of data from you, and you're part of our trial. And they're doing that with follow-up trial with probably about, among the three groups that have been tested, they're probably doing that with almost 20,000 patients, where these people will be monitored for 6 months, 12 months, a year, and then 2 years to see whether or not they have continued immunity, whether they have any troubles. And then we've got something that you could sign up for just as anybody who said, and that's called the VSafe database. So that's something you don't have to participate in the trial, but you just say, hey, I've just participated. I've just taken my vaccine. Everything's good, or I have the swelling, or I've got this, or I have that. So that's a voluntary piece. So the problem, the challenge with VSafe is that it is voluntary, and so you are going to get some selection bias. Not everybody wants to sign up for this, but you can see that it's a pretty good sized data set, right? So this is the number of people at the time that were reported. And one of the things I was interested in, one of the things I always get requests about is, gosh, we want to become pregnant. Is it safe? Should I take the vaccine or not? And the answer is yes. Take the vaccine, because it's more dangerous to you and your fetus not to be vaccinated and catch COVID than it is for you to take this vaccine by far. And I'll show you some of that data. But we want to look at some of the broader data as well. So you can see of the 55 million people who are taking the vaccine. And by now, by the way, on a worldwide basis, over 200 million have taken the vaccine. So that's a lot of people. We got a lot of data sets, and so far, no big safety issues, and very good immunity and efficacy results. And you can see that now, of the 55 million people in the United States, 4 million or so at the time this was happening in February 16th, exactly a month ago, signed up and said, "Yeah, I want to participate." And you can see almost 10%. I'm sorry, not quite. 1%, which is typical pregnancy rate for the United States, said, "I'm also pregnant." So that's sort of what happened. And you can see that of those, that's just people who were reporting in. Of those, they actually registered. So you can decide, okay, I'm just going to report myself and say, yep, I'm in this, these are my conditions. You can also register yourself in order to be able to actually report. So they had 1,800 people registering of this. And in that time of the 1,800, there are 275 completed pregnancies and 232 live births, which is great. I mean, it's actually higher rate of live births than we would actually anticipate with people not taking the vaccine, interestingly enough. So this is what the next big area is anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis is, and you can see that we finally got to parts per million, and we can now kind of say with some certainty that you know, if you're kind of that 1 in a million person who has special anaphylaxis, if you're taking the Pfizer or Moderna shots, the reason they have a slightly higher anaphylaxis rate is because they use a lot of polyethylene glycol. It turns out that is something that people are allergic to at a little bit higher rate than J&J's vaccine. So you can see it's about 2 to 4 times higher, but it's still at a parts per million level for 2.54, and then versus 1, slightly less than 1 person in a million is going to have an anaphylactic shock. And by the way, no one's died of the anaphylaxis. Everyone's had their EpiPen with them. Everyone's gone ahead and taken the, if they've had an adverse reaction, everyone's ready to go. That's why you wait that 15 minutes after you take that first shot. Sometimes, and people with a history should wait 45 minutes. So just to make sure you're not going into a situation. Now, we also kind of register all the other bad things that can happen to you. And you can see what we're interested in is that last 2 columns. We're interested in, okay, what is the problem? That's the, do you have encephalomyelitis? Are you going to get myocardial infarction? Are you going to have respiratory distress syndrome? Those are very serious responses to, and very serious adverse events to a vaccine. And you can see on the far right, what happens is, and this is how long they monitored this for, which is how much when you'd expect to see some kind of response, from a vaccine. You can see the events in vaccinated versus the risk versus the events that people are expecting. Right, that's the second to the last on the right and the right. And so, if you had this many people taking the vaccine, you would expect in the general population 26.0 myocardial infarctions. Whether you've taken a vaccine or not, you would have expected 26, and the actual events in the vaccinated is 23. So you can see that from that, there's no excess that's occurring. And that's true in the entire column. And so that's what's nice about that is it's in the expected, statistically expected levels that you would have expected anyway, whether you've gotten the vaccine or not. If you got the vaccine, you're at the same risk level as people in general public. And so great news after, now 55 million shots. So we're now instead of 75,000, well, actually, we actually tested in these 2 groups probably 20,000 plus 15,000, so 35,000. So 20 times now that we've got 200 times more data, the answer is it's holding, which is great. And now here is the pregnancy, and you can see here are all the pregnancy outcomes that you would expect. In the background rate, that's the background rate. That's how much you'd expect, right in the middle column. And then the far column, you see how many actually occurred. And you can see in every case, we're right in that range of what we'd expect normally anyway, whether you were vaccinated or not vaccinated. So great news. And the great news is it really protects you significantly if you from not getting a bad disease and sadly possibly dying yourself or killing your fetus or causing great harm to the fetus in some way when you don't have enough oxygenation that's very difficult for the baby to survive, for a developing fetus to survive normally with that situation if you're severely oxygen compromised as a pregnant woman. And that's what happens, sadly, with severe COVID. So you want to avoid that situation at all costs. This helps you avoid it, and you're not causing any additional risk to yourself. So, and I say this because there have been instances where people have decided to wait. They said, I'm not really sure about this vaccine. I want to go ahead and let's wait for a slightly better one. And so here's what happens on a population basis. That's on the individual level, right? If you're pregnant, go ahead and take a shot. But here is what happens on a national level. And Germany decided that the AstraZeneca vaccine wasn't very good. And they they said, we want to wait till the Pfizer vaccine comes through, because they were a little bit proud nationally that Pfizer BioNTech was their vaccine. The UK was the AstraZeneca vaccine. They had a chance to approve and start vaccinating everybody at the same time the UK did. The UK was slightly ahead of us in terms of approval. They were about 3 weeks ahead of us on first approvals. Germany decided to wait to approve it till after we actually approved our vaccine. And the problem was they also told everyone, and it's not very good. And so no one really wanted to sign up for it. So you can see what happened was they were ready in Germany to vaccinate at the same level the UK was, but they only got about 8% of people to so far vaccinate today, whereas 6 to 8% actually. In the UK, we're at 35% vaccination levels. Now, what that meant was, what Germany said was, if we don't vaccinate, basically, and wait, we're trying to get slightly better. And you can see how much slightly better that would be. What we know is that if you have one of these vaccines, right now, nobody who's been vaccinated has died of COVID. Nobody who's been vaccinated has gone to the hospital with COVID. So there have been a few hundred severe cases that have gone through even despite being vaccinated. So those do occur. So if you do all the math, if they had gone ahead and vaccinated with AstraZeneca, they could have had between 0 and 7,200 deaths. If they waited for Pfizer and Moderna, they could have between 0 and 2,000 deaths. But when waiting for that extra 4% benefit of waiting for a Pfizer shot, possible benefit and possibly 0 benefit, they actually exposed themselves to 50 extra days of people dying at 200 people per day. So they said, we'll wait 50 days. And meanwhile, they're having 200 people dying a day. That's easy math, right? That's 10,000 people dying, and you're hoping they're going to save an extra 40. That's it. So that's what happens when you don't really do the math and figure it out. So what happens? I've had probably 50 people come to me and say, Fred, I have a chance. I could take the J&J vaccine, or I could wait for 3 weeks and take the Pfizer vaccine. And every time, even when the person is 18 years old, perfectly fit, has no conditions, the answer is take the vaccine now. Don't wait for that extra 3 or 4%, and no change in actually death rates. So they're, basically Germany sweated a 4% improvement opportunity while they had, while the house was burning down. Don't do that. That's what we got right now. We got the house burning down. We got lots of deaths out there. Lots of, we got 70,000 new cases a day in the United States. So don't take that chance. Now here's what happened overall. You can see the problem was not only did Germany actually cause their death rates to go way up and the new infections to go right. I mean, look at that curve, straight up, even much higher than ours did, because they also have the B117 variant. And I told you the B117 variant last time. It is 50% more contagious, so you get transmission at 50% more rate, and it's 20% more deadly. So you don't want to, and right now we think that V117 is going to become the dominant variant in the United States between now and May. So what happened last time was what happens when that happens, and our best chance for not allowing that to happen is to avoid to prevent the virus from actually replicating. So you want to be able to stop its reproduction rate, and they do that with masking. Right now, we don't have enough people who are vaccinated to do that with vaccines, and we don't know actually if the vaccines stop transmission. We do know, though, that if you have a physical barrier in front of your face, you're not going to breathe on people, you're going to stop transmission that way. And with an N95 mask, it's 99.9% effective in stopping transmission if you've got it properly fitted. And even with a cloth mask, it's 40% effective. And if you double it up and tie it down right, it's up to 60% effective. So that's what we really want to keep doing, even though we're starting to vaccinate at a faster rate than Germany. Otherwise, we're going to have that big peak when the B117 virus variant comes through, because what you're doing in the past with old technology isn't going to be enough to stop B117, and that's what they didn't understand. So look at how much different when you're on the yellow and chart is Germany, is the EU, and that's the new variant they have, and we're on the old variant on the US. We're not quite as good as Europe is with protection. Despite that, Europe, you can see that slope just going straight up versus the United States, where it's a little bit softer. And if we're starting to have challenges with B117, you can bet that we're going to go straight back up again. So the idea is try to avoid getting infected, try to avoid allowing the virus to keep replicating, because the more it replicates, the more it has a chance to mutate, and the more it mutates, the more it has a chance to become dangerous, like the B117 variant, which is now in the United States. And the problem with that is that, remember before I said, 75% of people should be either vaccinated or have had the virus, and then we're going to be protected. And unfortunately, because the B117 virus is that much more transmittable, now our herd immunity target is 85%, not 75%, because it's going to become the dominant piece. So by waiting and letting this get really intercalated into our private lives, we're letting this new variant come in, we're going to actually have to have more vaccines and more barriers and longer time to improve. So that's the problem. And you can see that right now, luckily, a lot more people are getting positive about taking the vaccine, which is super. But of course, we have to go from 75 now to 85%. And right now, my guess is that even though we have a 24% improvement in overall people willingness to take the vaccine, that means we're probably at about 77% or so that we're going to get with natural immunity. In the past, that would have been just enough to get us over on average, but today it's not going to be enough. We have to do more, which means we need to have, more push on the vaccine, faster access to, and hopefully we can give people more venues, right? If you've taken the vaccine, you can get together with other vaccinated people. If you have taken the vaccine, you can come to our special party. If you come to if you take the vaccine, you can go on our flight on a long haul and to a nice place. Or you can go to your job without having to be tested all the time, or go to school without constantly being tested or wearing a mask. Those are the sort of things that we need to do to kind of push the vaccine so that we can now achieve the even higher targets we have to achieve herd immunity.
Let me ask you real quick. Yeah. Are people going to be carrying a vaccination card? Is there going to be an app for your smartphone? Because you're going to have to verify to get on a plane or do other things that you've been vaccinated. How are they going to handle that?
I think so. We are looking at that very carefully. A lot of so, for example, Israel has the green pass. The EU have different carte de santé and other smart cards that indicate whether you've been vaccinated. India has a vaccination card as well. It's automatic. It's a beautiful information technology we installed for India that really is going to help them a lot. I think in the United States, there's going to be a lot of resistance for privacy reasons to have passports. But I think if you want to attend and do certain things and to get access to certain things, particularly, for example, countries, they're going to say, well, we love your independence, but we're pretty safe here. And if you want to come to Taiwan, you're going to have to show us you've been vaccinated. And that's typical today. I mean, you look at the special, I don't know if you ever, on the special yellow card that you see for vaccination, they have an national vaccination piece, and they're not very complicated. And if you're going into an area that has had trouble, for example, with yellow fever, or coming from an area from yellow fever or malaria, you'll get a little stamp, and then they'll expect you to have a vaccine or have done taking countermeasures before you enter the country. So it'll take a little more planning. So the answer is I don't think it's going to be required in the United States, but I do think that other countries are going to require it. And for people who are traveling a lot, you'll have to have a card. Right now, that's my guess. If we continue to have trouble with variants, I think it may get quite complicated, and the U.S. at that point may require it to indicate what vaccine you're up to date with and which variants you're sheltered from. Because if it gets more complicated than it is right now, where we have a pretty good vaccine for everything that we're really fighting against, that's one scenario. But if it turns out that you're not any good with the vaccine you've taken isn't any good for South America, and you're going to South America, at that point you probably want to get vaccinated. You want to know that and have a record of it. So
well, even to go to Europe, I think even if you're out vaccinated, don't they still require a quarantine once you land or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Many countries are still requiring that because they're concerned that you can still be a carrier. Once you know more about transmission, then if the transmission rates are also reduced by, we think, up to 70 to 80%, at that point, I think some of those standards will relax. But right now, absolutely right. Quarantining is required for most countries.
Can you imagine that? You fly to Europe and you got to sit in a hotel for 14 days before you go out?
Fly back again. Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that sounds like fun to me, So.
Yeah, no, that's right. And sometimes they're down to 10 days now for some, but 14 days is a long time to sit in a hotel. It's expensive. So here is the message, the problem that we're having, right? A number of our states are starting to open up. And because we're sort of antsy, it's going to be nice weather. The South especially it's perfect weather right now, and it's going to get too hot in the summer, so they want to, kind of make hay and have fun while the sun is shining. And you can see here all the different states. And I actually consulted several of these states who are pursuing different strategies. Some are pausing reopening, like Washington State is and Wisconsin is. Others are going full tilt and completely opening up. You can see Iowa, Montana, Florida, Texas, and then others are lifting restrictions slowly and easing them up. And what was funny was that there is a lot of polarity in this, and the problem is that we have a lot of conflicting signals. And that's because we're actually in a transition period. We're transitioning from a point where we're very susceptible, lots of COVID outbreaks, to one where we think we have better control. And so the question is, when should we go ahead and open up? And of course, I'm not sure we're ready for this, but this is what's going to happen in Daytona Beach on spring break, right?
I think it's happening right now. In fact,
it's happening right now, right? So the question is this smart? And the answer is no.
Don't see a mask anywhere, right?
Oh, having a grand time. We're in a transition period. I think we're getting an advantage against the virus. You don't want to let the virus come back, but with its biggest tool, which is fast replication. And so, when I see these kind of data sets and I don't know the answer, I tend to say, let's behave like we're not sure, and therefore we don't want to go out and go out on the thin ice and jump up and down or play hockey. We want to kind of take our time and make sure that the ice is thick enough for us to support the team. The challenge is that some governments, some states are treating it as, if we don't know, let's see what happens. And I'm more on the side of, if you don't know, let's wait. Let's wait a little bit longer. And here's what happens. So Texas, as you know, they decided to open up, and you can see that we actually did some scenarios, and this is what happens in Texas if you open up too soon. If you open up completely April 15th, and of course they actually were earlier than this, you can see the level of hospitalizations are kind of in the 200,000 level. If you wait until June 1st, meanwhile, you've actually decreased that number by 300%. So if you just by waiting by waiting 6 weeks, suddenly, because you're on an exponential curve and you've avoided having B117 hit you, you really reduce the amount of trouble that you're going to have. And if you are willing to wait until August 1st, then you really are going to really control this thing. And so for the vast majority of states, we're recommending don't open up too fast. This is what happens when we do this. We've done this for Virginia, we've done this for Georgia, we've done this for New York. All these states are asking, what happens? And the answer is, it does tend to look like this. And you can see that even if you wait the 15, even if you wait for 6 weeks, you're still going to have a little bump to have to worry about and control. And the question is whether you want to have no bump at all, or whether you want to have go through that bump of about an extra 40,000 deaths in the case of Texas, which is 3 times our size. So Texas has 29 million people. We've got 10 million people. So, you can just do the math backwards. They've got a slightly higher, we look at a whole number of factors here. We've got a little bit better, Michigan, the state of Michigan has a little bit better chance because of delay, because of the seasonality. But Texas, on the other hand, has slightly higher starting points in terms of positivity rates and so on. So and therefore maybe slightly more immune because they had more infection than we have in some of the rural areas. So in other words, this is about what's going to happen. And when the problem is, if you start to look at this, here's what happened in it looks sort of like a weird, it looks like a very weird pattern, doesn't it? That whoop, and then comes down back, and we don't really see that normally. So here's what we saw in Europe. And here's what we're predicting in Texas. And the problem is Europe is about 17, 18 Texas. And so if you start to, put them all together, and you put 17 Texas together, it's pretty easy to get a pattern that are each slightly offset, going into mobility and out of mobility and having more infection rates and less infection rates over time. It's pretty easy to generate a pattern that is very, very consistent with what we're seeing in Europe. So, we want to keep vaccinating. We don't want to expose ourselves. We don't want to have spring break like that, because we are one of the top COVID countries as far as COVID goes in the world. And, on the other hand, we're the top 5 vaccinated. And that's where the big questions come up about what's going to pay off, vaccinations, or the fact we've got a very high rate already. I'm getting tight on time. I can show you some more if you like, or we can wait until next time, whatever you like.
I think we're going to have to start to wind it down a bit now,
Okay.
and then we can save some stuff for next week. But let's give me a couple more minutes. What do you got? Well, one thing I wanted to ask. Now, we're a big tourism state here in Michigan.
That's right.
And I haven't heard the governor say anything about any restrictions on tourists. How do you restrict that? I mean, they're just going to get in their cars and drive in. But what would you? I know you don't work with the state of Michigan, but what would you recommend?
So what happens? I have talked to Michigan a little bit about this, and the issue that we have is not about our mandates. Our mandates are basically useless. What matters is how comfortable people feel to come and visit, right? So we can open up the whole state, and people aren't very comfortable about coming to visit because we have a really high rate of illness, or because none of our people are vaccinated. They're not going to come. Right? If you're in Chicago and you're feeling pretty safe, and you have, I'll drive up to my cottage in Traverse City, and you look down and you say, gosh, they're only vaccinating at 30% in Traverse City. I don't want to go there. And the place is on fire. I'll go, someplace else. And so that's the challenge we've got. It's not so much about the regulation that we have. It's actually about people's comfort. And the problem we have right now, like I showed you last week, is we have an awful lot of capability to vaccinate up north, and no one's taking advantage of it. Our lowest rates of vaccination are in the highest tourist areas. And if that keeps up, we're gonna have problems in those areas, and people aren't gonna visit. And that's no matter what we do. Because we do want to welcome the tourists. They're a big part of our economy, and they're going to be great for us if we're safe. But if we're not perceived as being a safe place to visit, forget about it.
Yeah, it seems to be politically driven. The rural areas of Michigan, shall we say, are much more Republican, and that whole thing with wearing masks, and it's not that big a deal, tend to be more politicized than it probably should have been, right?
Oh yeah, the politics are really, it's sort of weird. It's as though people, it's also the virus really cares whether you're Republican or Democrat. The virus couldn't care less, wants to have a place to have sex, right? It just wants to have a place to have reproduce. And you're that host. If you're Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter at all. As long as they find, and if you're not vaccinated, they will find you and they will kill you. That's the basic.
That should be the public service announcement that the state puts out. Something along those lines to scare the hell out of people, right? So.
Well, yeah, or hey, we're safe. We're at herd immunity, right? Suppose Traverse City could say, "Great news. We do all the math, and 75% of our people are vaccinated, and so we've got herd immunity. Come on up, right? That's where you want to be, starting kind of Memorial Day, and we can get there. We can get there easily. We've got more than enough capability to vaccinate in the rural communities. I'm not sure why, somehow people think it's non-Republican to get vaccinated, because I mean, if it wasn't for President Trump, we wouldn't be here right now. I'll tell you, he did the right thing by pushing vaccinations. We could have pushed some other things like masking more. We could have pushed some other, but he pushed that. And I was part of those teams. He pushed those teams really hard. He hit numbers that we'd never hit before, and he did it. And it should be a source of pride for the Republicans, not a source of question whether they should take the vaccine. There's just no doubt about it.
Okay, we're going to have to begin to wind her down, Fred. What are we going to be talking about next week?
So next week we can talk about. I wanted to talk a little bit about why the variants haven't hit yet, and because I projected a while ago that we were going to have some variant issues, kind of around April 1st, and it's now March 15th, and we should start to see a little upswing, and all we're seeing is flattening out. So there's some reasons I think that we could still have an upswing, and I want to make sure people are aware of that, because right now people are relaxing. People are in some areas mask use has gone down sixfold, and that shouldn't happen because we're still in a pretty risky time right now.
Yeah, I wear my N95 when I'm in Myers, and I go first thing in the morning, like about 7 a.m. And there's maybe 100 people in there or something,
That's the way to do it. And now that you're vaccinated, you're going to get a little bit safer. But we still, during this transition period, it'll probably last like President Biden said, through the summer. But after and then if in the fall we're not getting any bumps and any feedback, we'll turn a corner.
All right, we're going to leave it at that. We'll talk about the variations of all this fun little COVID disease here next week.
Yes, we can do that. We'll talk about the variants, and then we can certainly talk about even more than that as we get into how the variants fight each other, how we fight the variants. It should be a fun interactive battle. We'll talk about that.
Sounds great. And if folks want to find out more, where do they go, Fred?
FredBrown.com. Feel free to come out and visit and ask some questions. Be happy to answer them.
All right, sounds great. Well, that's it for the show today. We'll be back again with Fred next week, and I haven't quite got the other two segments booked yet, but we'll announce those later in the week. I want to thank you all for joining us, and Matt, as I said, I had to take off a little early, so on behalf of Matt Roush and I, thanks for joining us on M2TechCast, MI Tech TV. Hope to see you next week.
Was that good? I was hoping I'd get through more. But